Hey everybody, welcome to another video. 2 in 1 week? Oh my goodness. I had an idea. I was going through some stuff of comic book files, and I thought, I use this site a lot, and I've been using it probably for the last 2 years now, and so I thought, hey, you know what, I think I'm going to share this site with people who don't know about it. And what I'm going to do here in this video is we're going to talk about comic books, specifically Marvel comic books, and specifically 40 years ago, into the week. Now, we're going to have to play catch up here because we're at the end of February, and the last week of February in 1985 was kind of So this will be a longer video, and we'll go through and we'll catch up. We won't start with the beginning of the year, but we'll start with beginning of February and just go through all of the Marvel comic books that released by week up to for February of 1985. So 40 years ago. Now keep that in mind when I say 40 years ago. So again, this is right when I started collecting comics. I started collecting comic books, pretty religiously in 1984. So I was well into my game at this point. Buying comics right off the spinner rack, right at the bookstores, specifically Rochester Book Center in Rochester, over across from the high school, and in Winchester Mall we had Fireside Bookstores. Those are the two main comic book shops, bookstores that we had, and Walden Books. Walden Books too in Great Oaks Mall. There was a Walden or a B. Dalton, I think, out in Meadowbrook, but I didn't go out there that often. It's kind of too far to go on my bike. I remember I was saving pop bottles, mowing lawns, shoveling snow at this time to get money, scrape up $5 to go take, go buy my comic books for the week. So I'm going to switch over. I'll show you the site with the database. You might even know about it. It's called marvelfandom.com, and it's a wiki. But it's really nice how they have it laid out, and it's perfect, and it's pretty accurate. Now, I know when I put comic books, like digital comic books, in files, I usually put them by, let's say it's January of 1985 issue. I would put the January 1985 issue and start it at 1985 January, obviously, and then January through December. Or if they double shipped that month or one of those months, it would be from like a mid. You saw a lot of times they do a mid-November, a mid-October, or a mid and late. But for most of them that run 12 issues. That's how I put them in files, but that's not necessarily how they came out. Now, I'm assuming that this is pretty correct, and I think it is pretty correct because when I was going through some of it, it's like I remember these from 40 years ago coming out specific times. So I'm pretty sure it's fairly correct. So let's switch over to that site now, because like I said, this might be a little longer video, this first one, so let's do that and get it underway. Again, like I said, it's a Marvel database. It's on this fandom.com wiki, category week 6. It's, the only thing I don't like about the site is sometimes it's hard to get on this screen here. So you have to go by these weeks, and then you'll end up here. And as you can see, you can go back to 1984 if you want here. But here's 85 January, and these are the different weeks. Now, obviously, January, they shipped, at the end of the month, they shipped 5 times that month. And some of these months, like I know this one in particular, this week 8 I don't think anything came out this week that I remember. I don't know why that was. Maybe it's just February. But they show Transformers, like British Transformers, which they do have British stuff kind of intermingled in here, as you can see there too. There's a Transformers UK. And then this Doctor Who magazine came out over here too as well. But you'll see it'll say UK if it's UK. And if you're in the UK, that might mean a thing too. But like I said, I would normally start here at week 9 because we're going into this week would be week 9 of February, starting, today's Sunday, and going in this Wednesday would be the 9th week for comic book shipping, because it will be for 2025. But we're going to go 40 years back, and like I said, we're just going to play catch up because there's nothing really came out this middle week up to 27. And of course, here's where I'm starting. It's week 6 of the year, which is the first week of February. And so let's go through these. I don't think I need to blow these up any bigger, do I? Maybe I do. Let me go a little bit bigger. If I remember how to do this. Oops. Isn't it? Okay, there we go. Let's see. That should work. Okay, just make them a little bit bigger so you can see the week too. Yeah, well, let's go back one. There we go. Yeah, that should be good. All right. So, Avengers 255. I bought this right off the shelf. I kind of, like I said, my first couple of years of buying comics, I kind of didn't know exactly what I wanted to settle into. I mean, I knew Spider-Man, obviously, and I knew X-Men. But Avengers, I was just kind of... The funny thing was, because I didn't really recognize a lot of, like, the Avengers in this time period. I mean, obviously no Cap, but there's no Iron Man, there was no Hulk. You had, Monica Rambeau as Captain Marvel, and I didn't know who she was until 1984 when the role-playing game came out. And, of course, through Secret Wars. So, and then, like, the Black Knight. And some of these characters, I didn't know who... Like, I didn't know who this guy was. I think it's... Is it Quicksilver? I can't remember who that is. But I've gone back a couple of years ago, and I read some of these Avengers. I don't know if I read this specific one, but what I was doing was I was kind of using this database to do the same thing. I would go back and I would read, like in like a given week, I would go back 40 years ago and read the comic books that came out that given week. And of course, in 1984 it was fun because they had that whole like the junior editors took over when everybody was at the San Diego Comic-Con, which wasn't the San Diego Comic-Con as it is today. But let's go through these books here. I'm just going to keep popping this back just so you can see all of them. I did collect... I don't know if I collected Conan this month. I know some of the... I know they're towards this era of Conan. And I know I had a lot of John Buscema issues of Conan. But I don't know if I specifically collected in 85. I think I picked up a couple of Savage Swords just because... they're on the magazine rack part, and I was like, oh, what are these? But I didn't have a lot of these. I did start kind of picking up Conan a little bit more regularly, but then I kind of stopped again. I was all over the place with Conan. Obviously, I didn't have Doctor Who magazine in 85. I got a few of these in the 90s, but I never had these back in the 80s. So we'll skip over the Doctor Who stuff. Now, I know this specifically had this because this is this is the same time... Sorry, let me get that to... There we go. Oh, darn it. We had... I had a magazine subscription at this time, but for a comic book subscription. And this kind of... I already had the subscriptions going before I got into Marvel Comics, like I said, of 1984. And I started with... G.I. Joe 1982, I started getting a subscription to it because I fell in love with it right off the bat. It's like, oh, this totally pushes all my buttons. And I had a subscription to Star Wars comics at the time, and it was all the licensed stuff, like the the non-Marvel Universe stuff. And I had, and then eventually I got a subscription in '84 for Transformers. So at this time I still had a Transformer, and I renewed the subscription. I think up until like 87, because I remember in 87 I didn't have the subscription to Transformers, I know specifically, and I had to go hunt them. I think 86 was the last year. I kind of let it lapse in 86 for my subscriptions, and I didn't get, and those are the only subscriptions I had, was G.I. Joe, Star Wars, Transformers. I think I had one other one, I can't remember what it was, like Micronauts, I think? The New Voyages? I think I had New Voyages of Micronauts as a subscription. That or I just bought. I know I know I had another subscription. I know it wasn't a superhero title, but this one obviously, this one hit big in '85 with the Dreadnoughts. I think this was the first appearance of the Dreadnoughts, because I know that the Dreadnoughts action figures came out in '85. And again, if you didn't watch any of my action figure video, '85 was the year that I started 7th grade at junior high, so it was not cool to still collect toys, but a lot of us did, and a lot of us did covertly. I remember specifically in '86 going over to a kid's house who also had a subscription to G.I. Joe at the time, and he had just gotten an issue because he pulled it out of his mailbox when we walked over to his house. And he said on the way walking there, he's like, by the way, he says, I don't know if you still collect toys, but he was like warning me, I still collect toys, but I don't like to talk about it. And I'm like, me too. But I kind of was sort of out of it. But 85 was a big year because of all the Dreadnoughts. So that was huge. That was a huge thing at the time. I Get Along Gang. Let's go back to doing it this way. It's funny about the Get. I didn't have this comic book, but I was talking with a friend. I really stopped liking cute things right about that same time. I would say at the end of 5th grade. I would say like the end of 4th grade. I think like 4th grade. I remember the Shirt Tails was like the last thing I kind of liked that were cute. I mean, I don't say like the Smurfs. And I did watch Muppet Babies here and there, and I did watch Disney's Adventures of the Gummy Bears, but I never collected any of the comics or had any like the plushies or toys or anything. The reason that Shirt Tails just brings up my head is one of the last years Burger Chef was in business, which became Hardee's at the time in Rochester. And was Burger Chef, they do like the glasses. Well, in that specific one, every week in the Happy Meals, they were giving out a Shirt Tails plushie for the whole Shirt Tails collection. And I was going to get those, and I still felt kind of like, I feel like a kid. But my dad was like, hey, you want to go get some of them Shirt Tails? And go to Burger Chef. And I was like, yeah. But I was just like, I don't know. I don't really know if I like cute things anymore. Maybe I should stop, before I get into like 5th grade, 6th grade. So I remember the Get Along Gang coming out, and for some reason it kind of piqued my interest, but I was just like, I don't know. I don't like, I'm not a furry lover or any of that type of thing either, so maybe that didn't help, but it was like I said, I was actually, self-conscious buying like over masculine action figures of military dudes. Even that seemed to me pushing my luck with kids at school. So, especially going into 7th grade. So comic books was like enough of enough to placate that itch that I had to be scratched, but without actually just full out collecting toys. And like I said, 85 was the year I was like, I'm done with action figures, although I still had a few, and I actually had a bunch. But I got out of He-Man at the time, and like Transformers was still kind of hot because it was 85, just after 84, and I still kind of was onto the Transformer buzz. And G.I. Joe, of course, I love G.I. Joe. And this is, by 85 is when they actually started having the cartoon after school, I believe. 85 or 86. Yeah, I think it was 85. Well, at least the fall of 85. Maybe not February of 85, but... so again, even that, we didn't have the full cartoon all the time, just those mini-series, so having G.I. Joe as a comic book was really the only way to get G.I. Joe stories. Sorry, I kind of jumped back, but anyway, so Get Along Gang, I didn't collect it. I've never been a huge Hulk fan as far as the comic. Like a few of those McFarlane issues, a couple of them here and there, I would pick up the Incredible Hulk, but I never collected the Incredible Hulk on a regular basis. It just didn't appeal to me for some reason. I also did not... I might have had a few of these, and I might have gotten them by accident, but I don't think I... And they're only 35 cents at the time. It was kind of... Because they're basically just an advertisement almost, but I had a few of these Marvel Ages, but I don't think I... Unless... I got one because it was 35 cents and the cover had a cool cover, or they had an article, or they had something in the comic that I wanted to read, or, whatever. So, but I didn't have the specific issue. I did the Starstruck that they're talking about here. I did end up getting the graphic novel of this, like in the late 80s, so, but I didn't have a lot of these. Oh, same thing with Marvel Fanfare. I think I had like the She-Hulk Marvel Fanfare, maybe one or two other ones. I know there was one that was part of like a blister pack that you could get at one of the bookstores. They had them like packaged in a buy 3 comics type of thing, and I think they had a Marvel Fanfare in there, but I didn't collect it on a regular basis. Same thing with like Marvel Tales. I didn't really get what Marvel Tales was at first until somebody said they're just reprinting classic Spider-Man stories. I'm like, oh, okay. So, like I said, I might have had a few. Like, if there was something, like a villain or something on the cover that I'd like, oh, I really like that villain, I might have had it. But again, I wasn't collecting this on a regular basis. There we go. There's Muppet Babies. Didn't have any of the comics. I didn't have many of the Star, anything under the Star brand. I think I had some of the He-Man ones. I had some of the Silverhawks, maybe Visionaries, more of that stuff. I didn't have, like I said, I didn't have any of the cutesy things. But I've never been an Power Man, Iron Fist. I never have. So I never had. I might have had one or two on like from the 70s that I just got out of a quarter bin. I was still collecting ROM. ROM was still pretty big for me in 1985. I didn't have a subscription, but I definitely was still getting ROM. I liked ROM a lot. I had this issue, bought this issue. Royal Boy, I don't, Royal Ray, it's probably a Star imprint. Yeah, it's a Star comic. I think it was like Richie Rich-esque. I probably saw it when it was on the spinner rack, but didn't pay any attention to it. Of course, then we got this Transformers UK. So let's skip over to week 7, which would have been the 13th of February in 1985. I didn't see this movie until like the 90s. I saw it, on VHS or whatever later on. I think a friend had it. So I didn't follow the comic, the adaptation. It was only a 2-issue limited series, and this was the second one, so it wasn't very long. That one's lost on me. Again, like the epic stuff too, like Coyote. I didn't get it. I just didn't know what I was. It's like, what is this? It seemed to me like, I don't know. It wasn't a superhero. I didn't understand what was going on, so I just kind of passed it up. I did have a few. I didn't have this specific issue, but I did have. Oh, actually, no, I did have this issue. Not off the shelf, but I got it later, like out of a bin in a comic book shop or something. But I had a few of the epics. I liked the epics because they would sell them to you. Like, you couldn't buy heavy metal at the time. Like, I couldn't. At 12, they wouldn't sell it to me. You had to be 18. But they would sell you epic. So you could still get something that's heavy metal-esque. I mean, there wasn't any full-on nudity. Obviously, like her butt's hanging out here. But, I mean, it's still clothed. But again, this was like Savage Sword of Conan. You see these on like the lower shelf at the bookstore, like in the where the sign, like Starlog and everything is. And you'd be like, oh, I wonder if we're gonna see a naked girl in this one. You get all excited. And then in Epic, this is about as close as you're going to get, which is pretty nice, but, that's how you're a 12-year-old boy, what do you expect is going to happen? I had this issue, I was big in the Fantastic Four because of She-Hulk at the time, so I did have this FF issue, bought it right off the rack. Of course, the John Byrne issue. Iron Man. Okay, I didn't start collecting Iron Man regularly until issue 200 with the Ironmonger, where he had that, the Silver Centurion armor on it. And that's specifically what got me sold on Iron Man. I mean, I knew of Iron Man before, and I liked the golden, red suit, and, with the James Rhodes and Tony Stark thing. I liked all that, but when I saw that Silver Centurion armor, and I didn't even know it was called that back then, that sold me. I was like, oh, I love that. That issue 200 with the Ironmonger, that's what sold me on Iron Man. So I didn't start collecting it yet. The Defenders was one of those comics that you would see like back issues, like in quarter bins, or back issues like at a drugstore or a party store, and it'd be like 25 cents or a dime, and it's just like, oh, it's a comic. It's a Marvel comic book. It's got superheroes in it. It's got, Iceman, and I'm not a big fan of Moondragon's black outfit. I like Moondragon, but I like the green outfit better. But anyways, Beast is in it. I mean, it essentially had the X-Men in it, really, But I didn't have a lot of. I don't think I had this. I might have had this issue later, but I didn't have it right off the rack. But I did have a few of them here and there. Again, it wasn't one I was regularly collecting. Spider-Man I was regularly collecting. Amazing, well, this is the index, but I don't think I had many. I think I got a couple, just like I almost, thought it was a regular issue now. I think I had picked up an index on accident a couple of times. I'm sure a lot of people have made that mistake. But Spider-Man, yeah, I was definitely collecting. And here's the thing. as much as Amazing's cool, I really liked at the time, and I'll probably keep saying this over and over again as we go through all these, is I like Peter Parker better. I mean, you know, it's not like I love Al Milgrom art or anything, you know, but I mean, I liked Peter Parker because it had like better villains that I liked. Unless the Hobgoblin was showing up in Amazing, I really just kind of like, Hobgoblin issues is all about. Black Spider-Man costume, obviously all about, but really Peter Parker, because Black Cat was always in it, and I really like the Black Cat. It should be in like a lot of episodes or a lot of issues. So I really like Peter Parker. I got this one right off the shelf or off the rack. And as I said, going forward, what we're going to do with this is every week, I'm going to try to do this every week, and if I miss a week, we'll do catch up, but I'm going to go every week through 2025 through every week, and I'll just focus on that week. I won't do this long when we're playing catch up unless we have to, but I'm going to go talk about the comic books of that time, and you'll also, as we keep going with this, you'll know kind of like what I was collecting and what my thought process was going along with all of this stuff. And of course, you know, a lot of these issues just trigger memories and trigger more stories type of thing. But Rocket Raccoon, I really wasn't big into Rocket Raccoon. I didn't have this issue. I think it's a mini-series. Let's see if it pops up here. 4-issue. Yeah, it's a 4-issue mini-series. Didn't have it. The only reason Rocket Raccoon kept popping up in my mind is because in Marvel Universe, Rocket Raccoon became before Rogue. So when I saw Rocket Raccoon in the picture, I knew Rogue was going to be on the next page, or the next couple of pages. Star Wars, I was still getting the subscription this time. Had this issue. Wasn't a huge fan of this cover, but was still getting Star Wars at the time. And this is getting towards the end of the Star Wars run. I think 86 is when they finally cashed in their chips, I think, or 87. I never, sorry for the snapping, but I never really got into Thor. I know a lot of people love Bernie Wrightson. They love the Thor comics. I never could get into Thor. I don't know. I mean, I figured if I wanted my fantasy, I would just read Conan. I like Conan better of a character as far as a fantasy character, even though he obviously is a superhero character and he was in regular day, modern day at the time with, you know, the Avengers and whatnot. He looked cool, but I just never got into him. I don't know why. And obviously, I mean, one of the main reasons I got into comic books, you know, actual getting into comics was this guy here, Wolverine, and of course, just X-Men in general, and Rogue. I really liked Rogue a lot. And, you know, this is a double-sized issue. This is 193. I mean, this is a classic issue. I remember seeing that and like, oh, grab that. And I remember this too, because when I grabbed it, remember, I only had like $5 or so in my pocket, and I think I just had enough. But when she told me how much my tab was there when I was getting cashed out, I was like, oh, shoot, I don't know if I have that much money. I might have to put a comic back. I know because Fantastic Four, I'm not 100% certain, but I might have grabbed this thinking it was Amazing Spider-Man, and then I said, oh, which one am I going to put back? And I think I did notice it said Index, and I went, oh, okay, I don't need this one then, and I put it back on the shelf. So this month this week I would have grabbed Fantastic Four, Peter Parker. I didn't need to grab this; I already had it coming, and Spider-Man. Maybe I had less than $5 because that really isn't a lot. That might have been like $3. Like I said, it literally. There's a lot of times I'd ride my bike up to the bookstore especially in the summer, with a sock, because I had shorts on, no pockets. So I would take all my change and like some of my bills, and I'd wrap the change in the bill, and then wrap the bill with the change, and like fold it over and roll it down into my sock. And of course, it'd be hot and sweaty. And by the time I got to the store, you know, I'd throw down this sweaty sock change, you know what I mean, to pay for my stuff. It's just how it happened back then. I'm sure this never happens today. I'm sure the kids don't. It's not even a thing today, I would assume. And of course, I'll get in more into that as we go. All right, let's skip forward. How are we doing on time? All right, 24 minutes. I'm going to try to keep this under an hour, and we'd probably be pretty good here. Again, this week 8, they just have this UK Transformers. I remember something weird. I remember it was odd at the time, and this may be correct, that or I'm just hallucinating this, but I remember riding my bike up to the store to buy comics, and nothing was there. Like, they said, oh, we don't have any new comics yet. And I just thought, like, oh, they're late. And I think I went back on, like, a Saturday, and they still hadn't had any new comics. And I was like, oh, no. You know, it was the first time that ever happened. I was just like, oh, what's going on? I don't know if it's a strike or what was going on, or I can't remember. But week 12, this makes sense. I mean, if they're showing it in this database, it's probably what really happened. Remember, we're talking 40 years ago. I mean, I have laser sharp memory, but my memory does have its holes. Oh yeah. I did buy this. The cover just spoke to me. It was the first issue. I think it ended up getting canceled. Because they already had, I believe, the limited series already came out, and I'd picked it up like I found it, for like a quarter. And I don't know, I thought Cloak and Dagger just looked really cool. I love the name Cloak and Dagger. She obviously was hot. And then he was cool with his giant blue cape. And I saw this issue, and it's like, oh, I love the art. And it looked very street level, it like kind of is. And, at first I thought those were Morlocks or whatever, but I got this, and I didn't... It didn't last for... I didn't read a lot. I mean, I had them, and I read them, and I read some of them. I was like, I never had, like, Kull or Conan the King. I just had some Conan issues. I mean, I had a lot of them, but I definitely didn't have all of them, and I wasn't collecting them super religiously. Basically, it was like if I had the money, an extra, whatever, $1.75, I would pick up a regular Conan the Barbarian, but I never really got Conan the King or Kull. I'm not a big Daredevil fan. I know people love Daredevil. They love Frank Miller Daredevil and Daredevil. But you know what? I always thought he looked cool. Like, oh, he looks really neat. But when I found out he was blind, this is how kids think. At least this is how I thought. As prejudiced as I was as a kid, it's like, oh, he's blind? He's handicapped? I don't want a handicapped character. Oh, I don't want to read a character about that's what they mean, the man without fear, because I had somebody explain it to me. And I was like, oh, so he's blind. Oh, no, I'm reading this. I didn't want any handicapped characters. It sounds terrible, but that's what I thought when I was 12. And I think I actually came to that conclusion when I was still 11, when I was first getting into it. Dreadstar, another one I didn't really get. I didn't know what it was. It was like part of the, it was still Marvel, but it was like an Marvel epic kind of thing, and I was just like, I don't know. I thought that was Scarlet from G.I. Joe when I first saw it, and I was like, oh, it's got Scarlet in it? It's not Scarlet. Yeah, I thought it was Scarlet and Destro, but it wasn't. And then I didn't have any of these gargoyles. I didn't get the gargoyle thing either. I mean, it was a cool cover, but I didn't really get much into the gargoyle. Just like when in Defenders he'd show up a lot, and I was like, whatever. Again, like Moonshadow, I remember seeing it. It looked too adult for me. This looks like something for the adults would like. And it's weird because I kind of liked stuff that was for adults. Like whenever adults would talk about Conan, like, oh, I want to hang out with the older guys, the guys in their 20s or 30s. They're all talking about Conan, and I just felt like, oh, I want to run with the big dogs. But then there was stuff like this that seemed very adult, which a lot of the epic stuff seemed very adult. And I just no, it just didn't. I didn't see anything in it, unless there was like a naked girl or something in it. I didn't really see anything that really, even think with a Grim Reaper or something would be cool. No. New Mutants. For me, New Mutants it's kind of like the Defenders. It was very hot and cold. I liked it because it was. Here's the thing. I liked it because it was the X-Men. A spin-off of the X-Men, and you got these New Mutants, right? But I also didn't like them because they were kids, and they were obviously, I think, older than 12. They're like probably 15 to 16, 17-year-old kids, and I don't know, I just didn't like it. I didn't want to read about kids, and that's why it's weird today whenever I see all this stuff always catered to teenagers. It's like, for me, when I was a teenager, I didn't want to read about teenagers. I wanted to read about adults because I wanted to be an adult. So like reading about or having adventures with kids my own age. It's like, ugh, I didn't like kids my own age to begin with. Peter Porker, I never really got into. I thought it was funny, but I never got into it. Again, here's another Star imprint. I think this is like an older comic, like kind of come back. Looks very like Jetsons almost, or maybe even Richie Rich. I don't know if that was all done by the same. I think Jetsons and Richie Rich, I don't know if they're done by the same people. I didn't know much about it then. Don't know much about it now, and it didn't really appeal to me. Again, there's another one like the Sword of the Swashbucklers. You think with being into D&D that I would have been all over this? I just didn't do anything. Didn't click any bells. I think it's weird because even if I really liked, say, Dungeons and Dragons, or liked something that was like fantasy, but when I came to comic books, I kind of like, I would balk at like fantasy comic books. So I was like, I don't want fantasy comic books. I want superhero comic books. But when I wanted fantasy, I'd want Dungeons and Dragons or a fantasy novel or something like that. It's like I was weird with that. I didn't have this particular issue, but I did start getting into the Thing a little bit when the Grapplers were. For some reason, I loved all these female wrestlers when the Grapplers were in there, and then of course the other Captain Marvel. I can't remember what her name was. Not Julie Carpenter because that's Spider-Woman, but the other redhead. That was her, and She-Hulk would show up in this, and and I was into wrestling at the time, and Thing was always doing the whole wrestling bit, being at the Garden, Madison Square Garden. So I kind of liked Thing. I didn't, again, like Conan or anything like that. Didn't religiously collect it, but I did have issues that I saw that I liked. I would pick up if I had some extra change. Web of. I loved, because I got Web of #1 right off the rack, and they had the black costume. I got the poster to it, it's just like, oh, I really like this, but then he'd be like not in the black costume, go back to the red costume, or like I'd flip through it and the art just didn't seem that great, or the villain wasn't that great. I loved the Web of Spider-Man, that was so cool, and I loved the graphic, and if he was in his black costume, I was there, but Web of was hot and cold with me. I didn't religiously collect it. Like Peter Parker and Amazing, I was on every issue. But Web of, I was just like here and there. And obviously, if it was a crossover issue, I'd pick up those. But I didn't have every Web of. And it was confusing to me as a kid back then because you had Web of, you had Peter Parker, you had Spider-Man, then you had these indexes, then these Marvel Tales. There's so much Spider-Man coming out that if you weren't paying attention and you only had a finite amount of change in your pocket to buy a comic, you don't want to accidentally buy the wrong comic book, obviously it's, buyer beware, or you should pay attention, but, I'm a kid, and, you'd make dumb mistakes like that all the time. So that was my February. I won't get into March yet. We'll start March. I'll do the video for March. I'll try to do it on the Wednesday of... which would be what? March. That would be which week is that? The first week of March. So the 6th then was on a Wednesday. So this month, this year, it'll be on a 5th. So on the 5th on Wednesday, I'll do a video and we'll go over the first week of March. And again, from then on out, I'm going to try to do one a week for each week 40 years ago. It's cool, your anniversary time. A lot of my videos, I'm covering things from 40 years ago because that's my childhood and that's, my teenage years. And, so we're gonna kind of go over that. And like I said, that's when I first got into comic books. So there's a lot of stories involved. And people who were younger than me, if you're looking back, if you want to, somebody's, first-hand stories or first-hand experiences with, classic comic books right off the spinner rack, that's some kind of do for people here. So it'll be fun. I'll see. Maybe I might lapse up. I might forget. I might blah, blah, blah. But I'm going to try to do it. So 35 minutes, I think that's pretty good. So let's look back Not this Wednesday, because technically this week here would be Wednesday's issue. You know, the 27th would be the 26th. So it looks like we're about a day off. So I'll come back and I'll do a video on the 5th for the for this week here of Marvel. So let me bookmark this here. Not in music. Let's put it in comics. Throw it in comics. We'll bookmark that there, and come back to it. So, all right. I'll leave you there. If you got any questions or any your own personal stories with these specific this specific time period, how old were you when this stuff was this particular month? How old were you in February? The end of February of 1985. Were you 12? Well, actually, I wasn't even 12 yet. I was still 11. I didn't turn 12 until July, so I'm still 11 this time. Yeah, because this is the beginning of the year. I keep forgetting. I'm still in 6th grade at elementary school in Mr. Camley's class, at 11 years old at this time. So I turned 12 in July, and then going into 7th grade at West, junior high for the first time. That wasn't until the coming fall. So we'll talk about that more, obviously, when we get to towards the end of the year here, when we start picking up with September, October. That's when I started 7th grade. And I've got some stories about that time too, especially comic related. Because remember, at this time, I don't think I might have gotten the How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way at this time. I think because I remember a friend had it. So it kind of, I wanted to make comics and draw, and I was drawing comic book characters, but I didn't really know much about becoming a comic book artist. So I know that happened a lot in this first, or might have been the second semester of 7th grade with Mr. Brooks in the art class, and then Mr. Spitzer. It would have been, yeah. No, it was Mr. Brooks and then Mr. Spitzer. Oh yeah, so 7th grade, all the way. I had 2 art classes, and it's when the whole comic book artist thing kind of started. So yeah, so that's where that's at. And again, you got any stories, anything to tell, any comments, whatever, go ahead and chime in. I said like and subscribe if you want. My subscribers are kind of still trickling, gathering, but I've been only putting out a video a month, so I'm going to try to put out more videos by doing this. So hopefully this might generate some more people. All right, but I will talk to you on the next one, or the next, if it's not comic related, the next one from there. All right, talk to you then. Bye-bye.